Go to speaker view. Okay, here we are. Good morning, everybody. It is November 1st, 2021, and this is the Smart Networker series and call. And my name is Dave Rolfe, and I'd like to welcome you all to this call this Monday morning. And today's topic is a very interesting topic. It's about follow-up, and it's been said that the fortune is in follow-up, and I have to agree that it is. And this is a touchy subject. It's a subject that people have a challenge with. It's full of rejection, and it's full of fear, and it's full of all kinds of negatives. But here's the wonderful thing: none of that stuff has to exist. So along the way, I learned and studied and experienced and understood follow-up and the importance of it, and how you can become really good at follow-up and how you can enjoy following up, because it can be very exciting if you know what to do and you get everything. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So first off, I'm going to turn on this PowerPoint. We're going to go to the beginning. Oh, no, I can't do it. I did that wrong. Let's start over. First, I'm going to share my screen. And we'll share the screen. We'll do the PowerPoint. And then we will expand this out. And then we will go from the beginning. All right, you can all see that. Just a little nod, a thumb up. Yeah, yes, you can see that. Great. All right. Okay, follow-up. Fortune is in the follow-up. Now, as usual, let's define what follow-up is. So, to follow up with something similar, related, or supplementary. All right, that makes pretty good sense. To maintain contact with so as to monitor the effects of earlier activities. Okay, so that would be kind of like in a customer service relationship, or, how's your prospect doing, or how's your customer doing, or how's your new distributor doing, and to pursue in an effort to take further action. So that would be the upfront side of follow-up, and, finding a customer, finding a new distributor, and that kind of an activity. Now, so what creates follow-up? This is an interesting aspect, because it's something that most don't look at because they didn't get the training or the education about selling or sales per se. And so let's look at some of the typical circumstances that create a follow-up. And then later on, we're going to look at how to deal with them or how to handle them. So an excuse. Not really interested. So, we'll deal with them. An objection for more information is required. Another party is involved or needed. They're tied up, and this is not the right time or place. Too busy to pay attention or distracted. They need to or want to think about it. That's the best thing. Oh, I want to think about this. We're going to have fun with that one. And they need more time to make a decision, or a customer service activity. Okay, so those are kind of the circumstances that, or some of the circumstances. There's probably a gazillion that happen. So what people fear the most? Well, what they fear the most is somebody saying no or rejection. In the sales industry, if you can Google search this, by the way, fear of the customer saying no or fear of being rejected is one of the biggest fears that exists, and why people don't like sales as a career or job. Now, I have to say that when I started my sales career, I started with insurance, and that, the number of people that told me no, I would drive out to the country and see farmers, and, you'd knock on the door, no, I'm not interested, no, I'm not interested, no, I'm not interested. And it was kind of like, oh my God, there were Monday mornings I didn't want to get out of bed and hop in the car and drive out to the country. And it was because there was the difference between positive and negative. The no was a negative, and if you didn't persist or move forward, then the positive would not be created. Okay, so a very, very interesting concept here, but very, very important. So now, I suppose one could look deeply at this or simply understand a simple solution to eliminate most, if not all, the challenges with this area of activity. And I mean, we all want to do well and succeed. I mean, that's the objective of doing this business. So when we are in sales and make a presentation, we want the customer to buy. That's the intention. We're not there to get the customer to say no. We're not there to, have them reject us and say you're an idiot or whatever the case. However, that happens. But if they don't, then this is what causes the negative effects. And, human nature is if we do enough negativity or if we run into enough negative circumstances and there's not much positive things, then we back off. And I've experienced this. I've gone through this. I've quit jobs, sales jobs over this. It's truly quite amazing. So let's take a look at the process that we're pretty much all involved with. And we're going to look at two views throughout this, and it's not the hardcore, but the soft approach of dealing with this issue, because we're not into hard sales. We're into helping other people. But my experience in that led me to some of this information. So you start out and contact somebody. Now you work on finding out if they're possibly interested in what you have and would they be willing to hear your presentation. I think that's pretty much where most people go. Now, here you may need to make several contacts before you connect or come to an agreement to proceed with your presentation. And each time you end a call or conversation with the idea of having another or the next, so to speak, you are creating a follow-up situation. Now, I have to admit, I have contacted people, I have gone through the effort, and then I have failed to follow up. In other words, something got in my way, something hit me between the ears. I just, for whatever reason, I just didn't want to follow up, or I didn't follow up because of either a fear of rejection. I was down at the time. I wasn't 100% positive. So here's what's important. Each time you end a call or a conversation for another time, the opportunity for them to back away or become not interested or not want to proceed can occur. Now, it all depends on their level of interest and how important what you are talking about to them is to them. So this opens up the door for what we've talked about in the understanding the process of our business is to find out what they need and or want. Find out what's important. I got so darned excited at the convention because of this new product we have, because this opens the door to a new story. And this opens the door to a product that not everybody is aware of. And, so it opens up the door to provide information and set the stage for something that's very, very important. So now, at the same time, if you would please mute your call if you have not. Let's review what your prospect's position is, because this is important to understand as well. So everyone has a life and is busy, and when someone new comes into the picture, there's going to be a need to adjust some things to accommodate whatever is going to happen. So, and again, this is important to look at because what we have to understand why things happen is because of their circumstance. What's going on in their life. So you start the conversation and you get to this question, and would you be interested in making an extra 5K per month? Which was one of my favorite questions. So the key thing here is what's going on in their mind once they hear that question. And this becomes the issue. So are they interested or not? Are they busy or not? Are they available to proceed or not? Now, if they respond in a positive way, then you can proceed. And of course, in that particular case, most do if you ask that question. There's the odd person that says, no, I'm not. Okay, so if they say, no, I'm not, then you obviously know what to do. Okay, thank you very much, and move on. Next. So they want to hear more, but do they have the time? So one of the things we discussed in the overall process of our business is right place, right time. And a lot of times people make this mistake as well. They get into a conversation and they get somebody that seems to be interested, and then they immediately want to pitch them on their deal when they're in an environment that's not in their control. And then something comes in and changes what's going on, or you're in a say a supermarket, you're buying groceries, and you start talking to somebody behind you, and you have to wait a little bit of time, and you're going back and forth, and you get some interest going. Is that the right time to go into your presentation or not? Because what's going to happen next? You go through the line, they're going to be busy buying their groceries, and all of a sudden your conversation's going to stop. Do you wait around and pick it up, or do what do you do? So these are the kind of things that create this scenario of start, continue, follow up, continue, follow up, continue, and it becomes important to understand them, to know how it works, so that you don't get flustered or knocked over because of the situation or the circumstance. So, in other words, what do you need to be aware of as you take the next step, whatever that might be? So let's take a look at that. So let's look at the perfect scene, as if this was scripted. So you have a friend to contact, you call them up and ask them if they would be interested in your deal, and they respond favorably. So you ask them when they would like to meet to discuss things, and they respond right away. And you meet. You make your presentation, they like what you're saying, you ask them to join you, and they say yes. You sign them up, they buy their first products, you sit down and start working on their plan. So, now, wouldn't that be nice if that's the way it all worked? And of course, it does work that way sometimes. It does work. I've had that happen. Where I threw the ad in the paper. It was Chuck Michael, and he came to the office, and boom, 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 that whole thing just, and others didn't. So it all depends on the circumstance and the situation. So let's now take a look at some of the possibilities that can create a follow-up situation, and then get into what we can and can't do, or should or shouldn't do. So now again, this is things that I've learned in my experience in the various sales jobs that I've had, the corporate trainings that I've had, building Niken to a very successful level, and 45 years in the network marketing industry. So first off, you contact a friend, and you can't reach them. So here's the key question: do you leave a message? Now, again, what's important to understand about this one is that people won't do what they don't understand, and then they won't get what they don't understand. So if you start talking in a language that they're not familiar with, you're going to blow them away, and then you're never going to get them on the phone. So I had a policy that if I couldn't reach them, that either, depending on who they were, obviously, is either a good roads message of hey, hadn't talked to you in a long time, wanted to catch up, give me a call, and then wait till you get into the communication, so that you can then hear or experience what they are saying for real, and either on a Zoom call or a phone call, and determine what to do next. Now, if you do leave a message and they haven't answered, what do you do? Do you keep calling them? Do you wait? Do you text them? Do you leave another message? And again, a number of different circumstances here. But what I experienced was the best thing was, if I couldn't contact them, I wouldn't leave a message. Would I call them back? Absolutely. Now, in today's technology, if most people have a smartphone, they know who's calling them. And if you're in their book, they know that you called them. So either they're going to call you back or they're not. So it just depends on the circumstance. And okay, so they can't talk. You reach them, they can't talk, and they ask you to call them back. And so there's your follow-up situation. But then they say, what's this about? So again, another key situation here of it was really interesting on the chat the other day. Somebody was saying they appreciated about the honesty of Nikan, and that's true. I mean, we want to be as honest as we possibly can, but at the same time, what we want to be smart about is not setting us up a scenario where people don't understand, because when they don't understand something, they're going to naturally back off. I mean, this is the problem with education. This is the problem with anything, is what you don't understand, you won't do. And so this is a huge aspect of playing this game. So in all cases, what I found the best thing to do is, wait till you see the whites of their eyes. In other words, get into a position where you can actually talk and communicate, see and understand, etc., etc. And so I wouldn't tell them what it was until I was ready to tell them what it was. And here's the other thing that I found important is sometimes you've got to find out what's important and what they're interested in first before you leave any kind of information or any kind of message. Okay. The possibilities that can create a follow-up situation continue. So you ask them when they would like to meet to discuss this, and they ask you to call them back as they're not near their calendar. Okay, follow-up situation. What do you say and what do you do? So there's some tricks here and some techniques that I have found to be very helpful in this arena. But let's continue on here because it'll all answer itself. So, or they respond right away that where and when becomes the question. You agree on a time and a place and you meet to make your presentation. You make your presentation. They like what you're saying, but they want to think it over. I mean, I don't think any of you have had that happen to you where they said they want to think it over. So again, from the hard school, we were taught, well, all right, I'm the expert. What do you want to think over? Became the response. Now, people will use a generality like that to blow you off and get rid of the phone call or get rid of the presentation. Well, why do they do that? Well, they do that because they don't understand something. And most, if not all, objections come about by people not understanding. It's not that they don't want to, it's they don't understand how to or what to do or what it's all about. And again, this comes down to that stable datum of you won't do what you don't understand. And it makes perfect sense. Okay, let's move on here. So they say yes, you sign them up. Or they say yes, but they can't start right away. Or they say no. What do you say or do? See, again, these are all situations that are creating this follow-up situation. Now, I'm drilling this in now so that we can understand how simple the answer to this is. They buy their first products. Now you have to go. I mean, okay, so here was an interesting one in building this business. They'd help somebody go silver, and then that was it. No follow-up. So they wouldn't help that person build their group. And so their group never developed in depth. It only went wide, and so it died real quickly. So it grew fast, and then it stopped. Why? Because of a failure to follow up. You get notice that they've received their products. Okay, so you get an email, their products were shipped, or some kind of message, or you see on on your back office, and what do you say or do? Again, it creates a follow-up situation. So if we look at all the circumstances that you run into and all the potential that you have to back off of what you do, now you can get a greater understanding of what the issues are with this subject called follow-up. Now, once you start this process, you want to make sure that you can get to the end, and this is where you ask them to join you or buy your product or service. Anything can happen, and for those with some experience, you know this to be true. So the key here is to understand and be prepared. That's the two operative words. The key here is to understand and be prepared for whatever happens, and make sure you have a plan and a response. And this comes obviously with experience. So if you're just new at this and you're just starting out, you can't be expected to know everything. This took me quite a while to learn, but in the sense of experience and practice, it then became, oh, okay, I get it. So if I do this, this makes it work. If I don't do this, it doesn't work. However, the key here is to help you learn that there are techniques that help, and it's basically understand what's being said, clarify what's being said, suggest a solution to what's being said, and then get their agreement. And we're going to do some role playing on this so you have an understanding. So understand, clarify, solution, and agreement. So we've seen the ideal situation, of a transaction, of contacting somebody all the way down to signing up. And we have seen some of the things that come up. Now we want to get prepared to deal with these through a process of follow-up. Now, obviously, when something comes up to interrupt your course and you need to continue at another time, you want to set the stage so as to make sure that it continues and happens and you have control. And that's the key operative here, is control. So the first thing you want is their agreement, okay, to meet at a new scheduled time or the next day or based on a scheduled appointment. Okay, this is really important. So the person says, well, okay, well, I don't have time right now to do that. All right, I understand. Understand the first word there. Okay, so clarify. So right now is not a good time. When would be a good time? Let them answer that question. And they say, well, tomorrow at 9 a.m. would be a much better time. Okay, so then we could carry on this conversation, blah, 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 at 9 o'clock on Tuesday. Is that correct? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to put that down in my book. Would you put that down in your agreement? Okay, good. So we have an agreement. Now, there's a reason for creating an agreement between two people in this kind of a situation, especially once you've run out of your warm market and people that you know and you're dealing with other folks or advertising people or whatever the case may be, is because most people will honor their agreements. But if you don't set up the agreement, then they haven't agreed to do anything, so good luck on reaching them again. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's human nature. I mean, if we sold everybody that we talked to, we wouldn't be here right now. And obviously, with the experience, we know we're not going to do that. Now, in some cases, you may want them to do something. So you may say, well, listen, I've got this great article. So we have this new thing on hydrogenation water. Okay, anyway, you know what it is. So you got an article about that. So you say, hey, I'm going to send you this article because I think you're really going to appreciate that. And then we'll be prepared for our talk tomorrow. Boom, you send them out the article. You've given them something to do. You have an agreement on the fact that you're going to meet tomorrow. So it's going to be pretty difficult for them not to do what they do. Every once in a while, someone says, oh, God, I forgot. Oh, man, I missed that. I didn't get the email. Oh, something came up. Well, that's life. I mean, those kind of things happen. But for the most part, this is how it works. Now, I remember when I was telemarketing and we would call people up out of the blue. We'd ask them if they invested. And if they said yes, we'd ask them, would they like to take a look at an investment? And if they said yes, then we'd ask them if they would like to receive information about it, and would they read it if they got it? And they would say yes. And then we say, okay, now a week later, I'm going to call you back and go through it, and I'd like you to have the materials handy to answer any question. Would you agree to that? And they would say yes. Then you'd send out the package. Now, even with all of those agreements that were set up, I mean, I would dial 120 dials a day. I'd talk to maybe 15 potential prospects. I'd send out maybe 5 or 6 packages, and I do that 5 days a week, and then a week later I might make 1 or 2 sales a week. So even when somebody makes an agreement, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to keep their word and keep up with that agreement. Therefore, you have to follow up. And of course, the key to that was, what do you follow up with? And this is going to be part of the information that's so important. Okay. So you also might want to let them know what you will do for the next meeting, like get some research done, or find out what about a concern that they have, or a question, or some technical aspect that they're interested in. Make sure they know that you're going to be working on their behalf. Now, this may sound funny, it may sound like out of place, but this is the obligation side of this aspect. When people feel that you're doing something for them, they feel more inclined to engage and be, because you're doing something for them. In other words, they have a respect for that. We all do. In other words, if somebody did something for you, then man, thank you very much. Tip your hat, whatever. So it's not that you're beholding to them, but at the same time, you just have a different respect for what they're doing. Now, obviously, and this is the obvious that we haven't put on the table yet. The key to all of this is making sure that what you're talking about is of interest to them. And that's the first part, and we've already dealt with that. That's the key to, step one of the process. Once you contact somebody, make sure this is interest. Once you get it going, it's going to be a series of follow-ups to get the job done. So now you want to also get them to write down the time, and then verify this by asking them maybe a little bit later, oh, now what time did we say we're going to meet, just to make sure that you know that they're on board with you. Now, this would be more related to somebody that you don't know versus somebody that you really knew well, that you have a trust in the relationship and a key interest. But this is just one of those techniques that you might use or you might not use. What's that doing? Well, you're finding out if they're paying attention to what you're saying, and in the sense of here's the thing. You do your presentation. The person says, I want to think about it. You try and deal with that. You can't. They say, okay, I'm going to talk. Well, let's talk. When are we going to talk next? And they said, well, call me next week. Okay, between now and next week, a lot can happen to that person. A lot. Now we can go from, we could probably list them out, and you, with all of your stories and the people that you know with, but what typically happens is they start talking to somebody else, and somebody else nags them out. And then they nag them out and say, oh, yeah, you're right. I don't want to get involved with that deal. And then before you know it, you can't get them back on the call. You can't get them to be engaged or whatever the case may be. So the more you can do to get their agreement to play with you and to follow, so that when you follow up, it goes smoothly, the better off you are. And we haven't got into the real meat and the potatoes yet, but we're getting close. Okay. Now, if it's going to be a fairly long tome, yeah, if it's going to be a long tome until the next meetup, then let them know you will send them a reminder and get their okay on this. So this was another thing, and you've got a call coming up, and maybe it's a week. It said, listen, I'm going to give you a call a couple of days ahead of time just to remind you about the meeting. Is that okay? You get their agreement or something to that extent. Again, why are we doing this? Because most of us keep our agreements, and that's the important thing. If you don't do that, then there's nothing to lock them into you, and getting them back on the phone is going to be a difficult situation. So, as a general rule, and this became a very important part of building the business, as a general rule, I always told my prospects or new distributors what I wanted or what I expected or what was going to happen ahead of time, and when it would, or ahead of when I would do an activity. I'll give you a prime example here. I've run into many situations where the person who is a new distributor won't let the upline talk to their downline. Now, I don't know where that came from. I don't know how it came about, but it's totally, some consideration that should not exist, because their people are your people. And for a new distributor to tell you can't talk to them is simply It's idiotic because that's how it works. So, but I ran into this early on. So rather than deal with it as an objection, I would explain, okay, this is how the business works. So you come into the business and we help you get going, and we start sponsoring people and you bring new people into it. I'm going to work with this group while you're working with that group. And they nod and they agree and they understand. And again, this is what led to this was the more I could get someone to understand and agree to what was being done or said, the easier it was to do and the easier it was to get the job done. And I wanted to make sure that they understood the rules of engagement. And this was something that they would learn and pass on. This then eliminated the surprise. So an example with this would be buying products once you become a distributor. Now, here's another silly one. You go through the whole process and then you sign them up as a distributor. And then now what products? Well, I wasn't ready to buy any products yet. Well, had that been introduced much earlier, as the way this business is done, then that wouldn't be an objection or a problem or a stumbling block. So it's again another aspect to eliminate follow-up. So now person doesn't buy any products. How are they going to build the business? How are they going to communicate the benefits if they don't have the experience? I mean, it's a logical sequence. Or how are they going to demonstrate if they don't have the products? So again, if you in your story, in your presentation, introduce this, so this is how the business works. We get products, we demonstrate how the products work, we use the products ourselves, we get to tell stories, and we pass those stories on because of the way this business works is word of mouth. Now, when you sign up, you get the products that you need, and then over the course of time, you're going to get more products. Oh, okay, I see how that works. Therefore, it becomes an agreement. Another example is talking downline, which I already mentioned to you, so we got that one. Okay. Understand, clarify, solution, and agreement. So whenever something comes up, you first want them to clarify what it is so you understand what is meant by their statement. Okay, this is huge. This is absolutely humongous. So this then allows you to come up with a solution that can be agreed to and most live up to their agreements, and then you can move on to the next call or meeting and continue your process. Let's take a look at some examples of this that come up and what can be done. Now, I want you to remember that a lack of understanding prevents action. So in many cases, if they don't move forward, it is based on a lack of understanding. Something about what you were offering or presenting. So, again, we have a different language. Most people have never done network marketing successfully. Compensation plans are kind of, in the beginning, kind of hard to understand. They're easy once you get into it, but these are kind of some of the stumbling blocks. So you want to make sure you clear these up and big time. Okay. So an excuse, not really interested. So this is typical in that you contact somebody and they give you some kind of an excuse why they can't talk now. Now, one could be that they're simply not interested, but, and they can't tell you no. They can't just say, no, I'm not interested, I don't want to talk. They're trying to be polite. I mean, we all run into that situation. Another could be it's legitimate, and they can't speak to you now. Due to a circumstance, because you don't know where they're at or what's going on in their life at that time, and all of a sudden you're introducing something that they may or may not understand, may or may not want, and so as you never know, the procedure is the same. So first of all, you got to clarify, and then you want to make sure you understand it, and then from there you set an appointment or create an agreement to speak in the future. For example, is Monday a good day? I'd like to follow up next week, Tuesday. Does that work for you? Whatever it is. So the key to this is to be prepared for they're gonna tell you. To be prepared for what they talk about. To not just say the person says, well, no, I can't talk to you right now. Okay, I'll call you back. And people are, everybody gets these calls all day long. So an objection simply means more information is required or it's legitimate. So if a true objection comes up, then you need to apply the same drill. Clarify so you understand the specifics. Create an agreement based on a solution and continue on your process. Now, if more information is required and you need to find it, and then get back to them, so you set that up properly. Clarify. Let them know what you will be doing. Set up an agreement to meet again, or set up a specific time to call or Zoom or do a three-way call. So again, all of these circumstances, you just do the same thing. You clarify and understand it. So the person says, I think I've got this one written down next. Let's just run through it. Another party is involved or needed. And this happens when you're dealing with a couple situation and the other person is not currently involved in your conversation, but you find out that that person you are speaking with will need to confer with them. Okay, so what do you do here? Well, number one, there's two things. I would stop the presentation and work on getting everybody together. Now, if this comes up, you want to arrange to have a meeting with both before you move on, because here's what typically happens. You present to one person, and then they go home and talk to the other person. The other person has no clue what's going on. Nah, I'm not interested in that. And then that's the end of the deal. So if the person states that this is their decision alone, well, then you can take the chance, move forward, but be cautious, as in most cases they will then, bounce off what you said to their partner, and this can be tough to deal with. Okay. They need to or want to think about it. I love this is the best one, and they need more time to make a decision. So, okay, so let's look at this, because this is really important, because this throws off most people. And this is a key issue, and this is probably the greatest area that comes up that creates the need to follow up and or the fear of rejection. So you get to this point and then they say, well, okay, that's really cool, let me think about this. And then the person sits there, they haven't had any training, they don't know what to do, and they say, okay.
Where'd you get that?
And so please mute. Thank you. So you make a presentation, ask them to join you, and then they get hit with, they need to think it over or they need more time. And these are basically excuses to get out of the call, or they can be legitimate, but you don't know which at this point in time. In either case, the response is the same. Clarify to understand. So what exactly is it that you need to think about? Now, here's the clue. If they can't answer that question, then it's BS. In other words, they're missing something. If they then come up to you and say, well, I've got this job, and they get very specific, now you have something to deal with. Now, I want you to understand something in the process of doing our business. Not everybody is sitting there thinking that you're going to come along and talk to them today about Nikon. Not everyone is thinking that they're going to join you in the business and build a huge distributorship. However, in my experience, I've seen people change their lives completely and become Nikon distributors and can become extremely successful because they saw a solution to a problem or situation that went on in their life. That's your objective, is to find that problem, find that, and then present them with the Nikon solution. But along the way, because of a lack of understanding, they're going to throw up these roadblocks in front of your face that need to be clarified and understood. Or they say to you, how much time do you need to make a decision? They say, I need more time to think about this. Well, how much time do you need to think about this? So what most people do is they listen to who they're talking to, and then they follow their lead versus clarifying, understanding what's going on, looking at a solution, creating an agreement. And when they answer, then you have something to deal with specifically when you ask them directly. Well, what does that mean? That's the clarification and understanding. So if they answered with they need to think about it, so what exactly is it that you need to think about? Now, in my professional training in this particular case, we were also told to say, I'm the expert. Who are you gonna talk to other than me? I'm the one that can answer all the questions. There isn't anybody outside, that you're going to talk to. If you need more information, you need to see an article. You don't have to go that route yet, but you understand why are they saying this, and so you want to know specifically what they need to think about. And if it's real, then that they'll give you a specific answer. And then if it's not real, they won't be able to be specific. So you know that that's a brush off. And then you can just go right back into it and say, okay, well, what do we need to talk about? And then steer them back onto course. Now, this comes back to why they originally got on the call with you in the first place. Because they were interested in what you were talking about. They wanted to know more information. What throws people off is a lack of understanding. That's it. That's the whole key to it. If they understand, then it's easy. If they don't understand, it's not. Like, how do you do this? How do you make it work? Who do you talk to? How do you make a presentation? How do you tell a story? How do you handle all of this stuff? Most of the people that you contact don't know how to do this. So if it's some specific, then address this, clear up what they are concerned with, and then ask them again to join you. So once you've dealt with the first one, then you come right back to what you wanted to do. You're ready to join me in this business. And I've gone through this process so many times that, sometimes you have to do this 4 or 5 times, and then you finally get to the point of, oh, I get it now. Yeah, I'd love to do this. Let's go. And then you continue on the line until you handle all of their concerns. So here's the key to following up. It's knowing what to say or having something new to talk about. So in the investment game, so we were dealing with the oil and gas industry. So we'd make our presentation, we'd have a nice brochure, we'd send it to them, they'd say, okay, I need to think about this, okay, I'll call you back. You'd pound the phone to call them back, but it was just like, would you just say, well, how's things going, John? Are you ready to get started? Or, because they could easily say, no, I'm not. And you don't want to go there because then you got to really dig and really get into the hard sale and closing and handling objections. So the key is having information and being prepared to say, hey, John, I found some really neat information I want to talk to you about. And boom, you're back into the conversation. And so you know what they're interested in, you know what they want, so then your information that you're going to supply to them is going to be geared to that. If they're a health conscious person, or if they're a water person, or if they're a sleep person, or whatever with our new product. I mean, there's a lot of neat research out there on hydrogenated water, and this is a perfect scenario to open the door and say, hey, John, you've been trying to reach somebody. We just got some new information, bingo, bango. It's like when we did the bone health back in 2010. So what I came to understand was this, that what we're dealing with is a numbers game. Not everybody's going to join you. Not everyone's going to buy your product. So understand that to be the case. But here's the next part of this. You're not looking for those that say no, you're looking for those that say yes. And the whole object is to focus on the activity. Don't worry about the results. I mean, that they'll follow up if you do enough activities. And the key is to understand what you need to do. How much do you have to push out to reach your objective? Okay. Well, that's the presentation for today. We're, again, as usual, we'll post this on daverolf.com. So you can review this, and we'll also put the PowerPoint on there, and you can look at that as well. I'll stop the share, and we will get into our Q&A as we usually do. And so I will stop the record as well. And well, thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you next time.